No, I haven't seen Orko all day.
Fisto is a character who is quite easy to underestimate at first glance. He has a rough exterior with a giant metal fist and the reputation as one of Eternia's toughest fighters. But beneath that intimidating appearance lies a surprisingly complex history. Across different versions of the franchise, Fisto has been a villain, a wanderer haunted by his past, a fallen soldier struggling to clear his name, and ultimately, a hero who was willing to sacrifice his life to save others. He has one of the best redemption arcs in the Masters of the Universe franchise, which only a few other characters can embody to his level. So, it was never just his famous metal fist that made him so memorable. Of course, it makes him stand out, but it's also his journey throughout the franchise that makes him more admirable. So let's explore his origin, anatomy, and his evolution of becoming one of Eternia's most underrated warriors. Fisto's origins. The man behind the metal. I'm talking about the guy who is one of the most dangerous warriors of Eternia. And the most compelling part about this man is that he didn't start off as a hero or a savior. He was an actual bad guy. And no, you can't call him a morally gray anti-hero because he wasn't. He worked under Skeletor, who sent him to terrorize a forest and the people who lived inside it. That was basically the type of work he did. The 1984 Filmation episode actually showed his past. He had already become a nice guy here, so he rescued this young boy from a creature called Grazzler and sat down with him. The kid called him a hero, like someone as great as He-Man. But Fisto interjected and decided to tell him the truth about who he used to be. Well, his honesty does net him some brownie points here. But to get back on track, the episode was a flashback to his past. It showed how Skeletor had imprisoned the forest's elf lord inside a crystal ball and stationed Fisto in his place to run things. He committed all the dirty tactics, like damming the river, killing crops just to make sure the people who depended on these lands had nothing to survive on. But eventually, he came back to his senses for a young girl named Reyna. She was one of the forest's peasants who had helped him when he got trapped in his own scheme. Fisto had set a trap to drown his enemies in the floodwater, but the plan backfired, and he himself got pinned under the debris and almost drowned himself. But Reyna pulled him out of the dungeon and saved his life. She did that even though he made her and her family's lives hell. The moment when He-Man showed up and showed him kindness, that convinced him to flip sides. He helped to undo Skeletor's enchantment on the forest and started to live peacefully with all the people he used to oppress in the past. I think the character development is what makes his character so much better. Seriously, it's always so satisfying to see a villain self-reflect and try to become a better person. In the 2002 animated series, he is the brother of Duncan. The 2002 reboot series gave Fisto a better but bittersweet origin. In this version, he was Duncan's older brother. He even said at one point that he left home when Duncan was just a kid. But there had been charges of desertion against him. Apparently, 16 years before, during the Great Unrest War, there was a coalition between the warlords who tries to seize Eternia. Fisto allegedly abandoned his comrades in the field, and everyone believed this was the truth along with Duncan, especially when he knew his older brother abandoned him too when he was a kid. Moreover, Duncan served as the man-at-arms, and he was the most decorated and trusted warrior in the Masters. So he never forgave his elder brother. Their very first scene together in Web of Evil was Duncan publicly calling him out in a tavern, in front of He-Man and other spectators. Well, it wasn't really a warm, two long-lost brother reunion kind of situation. Rather, it was quite a heated confrontation. But here's where things got complicated, because Fisto insisted he did not desert. He said he had a memory loss from a battle injury that happened in the exact same time period of the war, and he genuinely could not account for where he was or what had happened. Because of his fragmented memory, he had to live through 16 years with the tag of being a deserter and a coward. So he drifted aimlessly and spent his days in bars picking fights with strangers. Because he had lost all hope after he got cut off from his family and got branded as a coward for something he was not even sure he did. And then, there was also another thread that the show had planted, but never got fully resolved, because the series was cancelled before it could. I don't know if you remember, but it was the episode Out of the Past, which aired before Fisto even appeared. It was during the Great Unrest, when a sorceress nursed an amnesiac wounded soldier back to health and fell in love with him. However, the soldier vanished mysteriously before she gave birth to Tila. The show never really confirmed who he was, but the timing and the memory loss lined up so closely that the fans and the writers were pointing at Fisto being that soldier. Writer Dean Stephan later confirmed in a podcast that the writers themselves never fully decided. However, the official series Bible actually notes that Fisto was born with his giant-sized hand, which visually works against this theory, but the show never really closed the door either way. Well, the creators later confirmed at a PowerCon panel it would have been a red herring, but by then, this series was already gone. But aside from that, the most important thing is that he only appeared in 4 episodes before the end of the series, and somehow, he turned out to be one of the most layered characters in the whole show. But you would be surprised to know how they have reversed the roles in the new Master of the Universe 2026 film. Firstly, Fisto is the younger brother of Duncan, and now, Duncan is the one seen spiraling and drowning himself in alcohol after he failed to protect the royal family. And then there's Fisto, who took the responsibility of leading the Eternian rebellion. In the 2002 cartoon version, Duncan was actually the brother you could depend on, but here, the makers have completely switched their dynamic. And honestly, I love that switch. It's fun to watch Fisto from a new perspective. Fisto once had a gigantic flesh hand. When Fisto made his debut in Web of Evil in Season 2, Episode 10, his right hand was not made out of metal. It was pure flesh and bone, although it was enormous and abnormally large. However, the show never gave an explanation for it. Even the series Bible notes he was just born that way. So Fisto was born with a physical advantage before any of the upgrades or any modifications were made. And apart from him, nobody else had that special feature. His humongous fist was large enough to smash through solid rock. On top of that, he had been sharpening his fighting skills by picking fights in the taverns for years. So yeah, whatever upgrades came afterwards just made him even more extraordinary. The metal hand was not what made him dangerous. He was already powerful from the beginning. Actually, he was special from birth. Durability and pain tolerance. Fisto earned his rightful place in the 2002 Masters, but it wasn't because of their victory. It was actually because of what he sacrificed. In Web of Evil, He-Man and the Masters got trapped in a cave during the fight with an ambrosia-powered web store. Even He-Man couldn't dig them out, but the show did give a reason, like why his strength wasn't enough in that specific situation. Though they were trapped, Fisto was outside and saw what was happening. So he used his huge fist to punch through the rocks over and over, and he continued to do so until he made a big hole for everyone to get out. But he immediately lost consciousness after the adrenaline rush because his hand got completely shattered from the impact. So, you're seriously telling me that this was the same guy who had spent 16 years getting called a coward and was never given a chance to prove all the accusations were wrong? And just think about it. He didn't even think twice before destroying his own hand to save a group of people. That included his brother, who publicly humiliated him hours earlier. The poor guy had to suffer so much for real. This one act silenced everyone who had been calling him worthless for over a decade. Mechanical cybernetic upgrade. So, when Fisto woke up and regained his senses, he found out his right hand was not functioning. But the first thing he discovered was that Duncan was already working on a replacement for his hand. The 11th episode of Season 2, Rattle of the Snake, began with Man-at-Arms finishing the procedure of installing the mechanical arms for Fisto. But Fisto had no idea what was going on. So, when he came back to his senses, he was completely groggy and wanted to know what they were doing to him. Therefore, Duncan explained what the procedure involved. He replaced the shattered hand with a full mechanical gauntlet that was much bigger than his actual fist. Also, it was made with a dense Eternian metal that was specifically engineered to hit harder and absorb more force than flesh could ever withstand. Duncan really did a great job building a literal weapon into his brother's arm. But nah, don't expect an emotional exchange or a thank you here, because that doesn't really happen. Instead, they immediately started arguing with each other again. You can still feel the unresolved tension between them that existed from the Great Unrest. Duncan literally built his brother's hand again, but he didn't say one meaningful word about it. I think that's how you define a typical sibling relationship. Well, The upgrade does turn Fisto from a naturally gifted fighter to someone closer to a semi-cybernetic fighter. But this was better than losing his hand entirely. The replaced hand was made of forged metal and was engineered by Eternia's most brilliant weapons maker. Most importantly, it was specifically designed with Fisto's fighting style in mind. So, it was heavier, more durable, and capable of withstanding impacts that would have crushed his natural hand. So really, I felt that was a major upgrade which worked in his favor despite losing his real hand. Master at hand-to-hand combat. Back in 1984, when Fisto was first introduced to the toy line, his official designation was Heroic Master of Hand-to-Hand Combat. So his title actually came packaged with the figure itself. The mini-comic, The Clash of Arms, actually showed what the title truly meant. The setup was that Fisto was scouting alone near the borders of Eternia on his mechanical horse Strider, but suddenly, 4 former Skeletor warriors that are Triclops, Clawful, Webster, and Jitsu ambushed Fisto all at once. Naturally, Fisto had to surrender because it was literally a 4-on-1 ambush and he had no backup at all. Therefore, he was captured and brought before Skeletor and Evil Lyn. The cunning Evil Lyn thought the most entertaining thing would be to throw Fisto in the Circle of Doom and enjoy the spectacle as he fought for his life. Circle of Doom was an arena where he had to fight against some of the most dangerous warriors of Skeletor. And then, the comic does something very unusual for the Masters of the Universe media. It almost sidelined He-Man and just let Fisto fight in the beginning. And let me tell you, the whole scenario changes. He started to beat his opponents one after another as they kept coming. First Clawful, then Jitsu. He was facing them in the arena with zero preparation. He maintained his composure, read his opponents, and used his giant fist to slam his opponents on the ground. By the time Whiplash entered the arena, Fisto had already been knocked down on the ground after 2 consecutive bouts, and that was a huge disadvantage for him. At that point, Fisto was already too exhausted to handle Whiplash's tail attacks. That's when He-Man had to come in and break things up at the very last second. But the most important thing is that Fisto was alone, outnumbered, and set up to fail here. But he still did not back down and fought against some of the best of Skeletor's minions until he could no longer withstand it. The new 2026 film also carried that same energy into the live-action adaptation. During the battle at the Royal Palace, Fisto fought through Skell Knights with the same power, and the live-action added such a great detail that they made his abilities 10 times better. In this version, they made his fist rocket-powered based along with thrusters on the underside. That even ignited when he threw a punch. Not just that, each impact was equivalent to a rocket-assisted hit. It's so cool, isn't it? So the 2002 series gave him the cybernetic edge, and the 2026 movie also decided to give him thrusters. The upgrades are just getting better and better. We have the same character with the same ferocity, but with a significantly bigger budget. Deflecting kinetic energy, projectile blocking. This is the aspect of Fisto's abilities that never really gets the credit that it deserves. Everyone just focuses on his offensive capability and his hitting power, but they miss how the gauntlet works in the other direction as well. As I said earlier, the metal that Man-at-Arms used to build the replacement hand was a dense Eternian alloy that was engineered to a standard, which was far beyond conventional materials. The result was a hard surface that was heavy enough to intercept any incoming force and deflect it sideways. If he raised the fist, it became a wall that could withstand laser blasts, magical energy beams, falling debris, kinetic impacts, and any type of force. Whatever hit the metal got absorbed and redistributed through the gauntlet rather than Fisto's body. It kinda follows the same principle as the cave-in scene, but they just reversed it. Earlier, we saw how the fist generated the force outward, but here, it received the force from outside and held it. In the 2026 film, it showed how during the large-scale battle sequences, Skeletor's forces were doing everything they could to break the Eternian resistance, and here, the gauntlet shifted its function entirely. It was not always the weapon. Sometimes it was the shield that was planted between the incoming fire and the people behind it. He's the same man who punched through a rockfall with a flesh hand, who had his hand shattered and rebuilt as a metal gauntlet. And now, he stands in the front line of open combat, taking hits that would end most fighters. Man, his character development throughout the franchise is truly something. And with that, we've come to the end of this video. Let us know in the comments down below what you think of Fisto's powers. And before you leave, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Till next time.